So I'm going to talk to you guys about riparian validation monitoring, and specifically what I learned from my first year of sampling and how I'm going to apply that towards the future. Okay, so basically what riparian validation monitoring is salmon monitoring on there. And what we want to look for are cause and effect relationships between management, habitat, and salmon, specifically those links between the three. The basic plan is to do 3 levels of sampling. We're going to do juvenile salmon monitoring in the 54 Stas and Trend basins. We're going to do red surveys in those 54 basins as well. And then we're going to do snorkel surveys, mostly in the clear water, to see what's going on in those larger systems that we're not covering with the Type 3 systems. So before we could really get started on this, there's 3 things that I really need to look at. One was, how do the Stas and Trends 50 basins represent for fish? Because they were designed for medium slope basin. Also, how is the best way of sampling juvenile fish in these basins? Should we do a small sample or a large area? And then finally, how should we do the Type 1 and Type 2 stream basins with snorkeling? Okay. So very quickly here again, we've got the Stas and Trends basins on 50. They're designed through medium slope. And I want to know how the fish population is there. So we've got 50 things, and I need to know how the fish populations are in the 244 watersheds. So what are the fish, and then I can apply weights to these basins so I can apply an overall estimate. Next. So first I looked at the available data sets over this area. We had 2 different data sets available, the intrinsic potential model and the SASE data set. And I compared that to my field sampling in 2015. And this is what I found here. And if you look at these graphs, the green is where they agree with what I found in the field. The gray is where it's wrong. The light green is where fish were present and predicted to be present. The dark green is where they're absent and predicted to be absent. You see from both these graphs, they weren't that great at predicting fish presence in our basins. So I built models, a lot of models, over 7,000 models. Individual species models, species assemblies models. I used logistic regression, artificial neural networks to predict fish things. Within these models, I used certain metrics that we could get through either GIS or DNR records. These, and I picked a combination of these metrics based on AIC model selection process. I'm not going to get too much in this, but that's kind of what we did. And then I validated the models based on leave one out validation model. So we'll go through there. And this is what we found. So every model that I validated was greater than 60% prediction rate for a species assemblage. This is our best model, and I got that up to about 84%. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm hoping that maybe this summer I can do a little more validation outside of the 50 to further validate these models. And I think, yeah. Okay. So the second question was, should I do a more intense method at the reach using multiple pass removal, or a very less intensive pool-only sampling all the way up through the fish distribution of a stream? Next. First thing I looked at, just manpower. How long is it going to take to do these surveys? With the reach, we could do 1 per day, and the stream, it took about 2.8 days per survey. So what this comes down to, in a 40-day field season, I could do 40 with the reach, obviously, and only 14 with the stream survey. And in my sampling plan, I'm looking to get about 30 to 35 sites per year. So here's the reach-to-reach comparison. So we've got multiple pass removal on our y-axis and our pool-only sampling on the x-axis. And this is total number of fish estimate with multiple pass removal and just total number of pool-only sampling. Did a regression here, and all these 4 graphs are the 4 combinations of either species or life history that we found in our basins. What we see here is there's actually pretty good relationships between the 2 methods, but the problem comes when you look at how much of the population we're actually getting with the pool-only sampling. All of it's less than 20% of the population, and with age 1 and older cutthroat, it's 5% of the population. Okay? So next, I looked at the pool-only method in the reach and the pool-only method through the stream. And this is fish density, so it doesn't matter how long you do the sampling for. Here you can see we actually have a very strong relationship between our fish densities in the reach to the fish densities in the stream. Go next. So this kind of made my decision fairly easy based on the number of sites that can be sampled in summer, the percent of the population that's being captured with the pool-only sampling, and the strong relationship between the reach and the stream, and the fact that the SAS and trends habitat data is only in the reach. We're going to go with multiple pass removal in the reach. Next. This next part is how should we do some of the larger streams of the system. So this will be done through snorkeling, but how much and where and things like that. So I'm not going to show you graphs in this next one. I'm going to take you with me snorkeling. So here we go. Here is the system. This is more of typically what we found in the Clearwater system here. You kind of see we're snorkeling around in here. Kind of a smaller pool, but a pool. And we're missing something. What are we missing? This is in the fall, early September. Here we're starting to get into a little bit of habitat where I'm expecting to see some more fish, but there's not a ton here. And this is fairly representative of the reach. There's some degrees where you're going to see some fish and no fish and stuff like that. Okay, probably click over to the next one. So this is a pool that actually had a lot of wood in it. And you're going to see a very vast difference. We've got whitefish here, we've got some rainbow or cutthroat or steelhead, and coho in this mix. There's a big old cutthroat coming right there.
So these are both locations in the main Clearwater?
Main stem Clearwater River, yeah.
How far apart?
About 1.5 kilometers.
What were the three species you mentioned?
You've got cutthroat, coho, and mountain whitefish. There could be steelhead in there too, but I just can't tell when I'm snorkeling at the juvenile stage. But it's just a totally different world when you've got wood in there. So what all this kind of information led me to do is next year we're going to do a larger section of the Clearwater River. We're going to add juvenile fish counts. We did kind of a relative density of juvenile fish, but I think it's going to be important to actually get those juvenile fish in these larger waters. A lot of the snorkeling I've done in the past, there aren't a ton of juveniles in these bigger systems, but it seems like they might be important here. And we're going to add a third person to go along with us and do some habitat typing and collect some wood numbers in the survey. So, yeah. I just released my annual report this week, and all the information I've talked about today is in more detail there. I can talk about that later on if anyone wants to talk about that. Let me know. And I would like to thank my field crew and scientific advisory group and everyone that helped me make this all possible. So.